So I got my first 5-star read of the year, and I'm going to talk to you about all the books I read in February. So this February I read 9 books. So yeah, let's kick it off. So the first book that I read was called The Night House by Joe Nisbet. I think that's how you say it. I gave this a 4-star. He is a Norwegian writer, sort of like a horror sort of writer, I should think. The opening chapter of this book was quite scary. It was basically about a guy who he sort of thought he had killed his friend by being sucked into a telephone, and that was a very scary scene. It's set in 3 parts. So the first part happens when he's a child. The second part happens, I'm not going to give you too much away. The second part happens when he was an adult, basically going back to the village, and he thought everybody hated him. So yeah, it's a very, very horror book. And the third part, by the second part I had actually guessed how the third part was going to end, but it did have a happy ending. So basically he's investigated by the police for a friend going missing. They basically thought he had killed him, and then he goes into sort of an institute for children to try and get him to be honest, and then whilst he's in there he escapes and some horrible things start to happen to other people. So that's the first part. The second part is he becomes this massive novel writer, and he's moved away to the city, but he comes back to the school and everyone starts to hate him at the school. But as he comes back for a school reunion. But as part 2 goes on, you do start to realise what's happening, and part 3, basically, I'm not going to give you any spoilers because you really should read it, is explaining part 1 and part 2 basically what happened. So yeah, that was my first little read of February. I quickly followed this read by Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and I gave it a 4.5 star. I love with the Harry Potter series how at this point the stories are starting to grow with the audience. So obviously I find the first 2 are children's books, but I think from the 3rd one onwards it does get darker, and just I think this is an important book because it's starting to link important characters to the story that goes on, because we obviously, this is a reread for me, but of this I didn't realise just how horrible Ron was to Hermione in this book. So yeah, if you haven't read the Harry Potter books and you don't want to buy them, they are actually all on Kindle Unlimited, and as much as I do have the books, I did actually read this book on Kindle. Next I went into another reread, and I'm going to explain to you why I reread the Hunger Games. I read this 11 years ago, and obviously I've seen the films, and I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't blown away with it when I read it 11 years ago. So the reason I am rereading the Hunger Games series is because in March a new book comes out, which I'll talk about more in a minute. So yeah, so I kicked it off with this one. I found that the film left a lot out. So for instance, the ending with this, with Peter's leg, isn't actually in the film, which if you've read the book you'll understand. I have to say Hamish has grown on me in this book. To start with I couldn't stand him, but as he went along he did grow on me. So yeah, I actually definitely so glad that I read this, because I've read this one and I read Catching Fire, and which I'll talk to you about in a second, and I really did enjoy rereading the Hunger Games, and I can't wait hopefully this month to read the 3rd, which would be Mockingjay, and the prequel, which would be, it's on the bookshelf, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So all before March the 18th, I think the new book comes out. Ready to kick that one off. So yeah, that was my next read. So my read after that, and I'm going to be honest, I was very disappointed with this book. I gave it a 3.5 star because it did redeem itself at the end, is Dune the Messiah. I loved the first book, and this book I just couldn't get into. It was a little bit, I found it a little bit more the same as what the first book was, because in the end someone's trying to betray Paul. He's not sure who he can trust. Can he trust his wife? In this book they bring Duncan Idaho back from the dead as a sort of a robot, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. And I actually, again, I didn't like Paul in this book. It's just, his character just come across arrogant, horrible, you know, wants all the glory, wants everything his own way, and I just really didn't enjoy it for that. I think out of 292 pages of this book, the first 150 bored me, but this book did end really well, and I will still read the third book, which I think is Children of Dune. So yeah, very disappointed considering that the first one was really good. I mean, you could just read the first one as a standalone, and I think I'm just invested in this series now, so that's why I will carry on reading this series. But if you do want to really carry on reading this series, just bear with this one, because like I said, the ending of this book is very, very good. So after that book, I needed something of a palette cleanser because I didn't enjoy it that much. And I think I've talked on here before about that I do really enjoy graphic novels. So with graphic novels, I sort of read them, excuse me a sec, read them alongside other books. So I might have a quick 20 minutes and I just want to flick through a graphic novel or something. It's easier for me. And I find with graphic novels, for instance, I do have Dune as a graphic novel, which I think I'm going to read in March. I can visualise it better in my head. So I read the first 4 Walking Dead books because I am actually rereading the series. I absolutely love them. I think the graphics in them are very good. I think a lot of people think comics and graphic novels are for children. They're not. This is a very, very dark series. If you've seen the TV series, you obviously know. But what I love about this is the TV series is completely different to this book. Some of the characters are the same, but the storylines are completely different. So yeah, I used that as a palette cleanser. And then I went, what did I read after that? Then I got my first 5-star read of the year, and that was The Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. We all know I'm a massive Ken Follett fan. I absolutely love this book and I couldn't put it down. Considering it was 800 odd pages, I read this book in less than a week. That's how good it was. So basically the book starts off in the strikes of the coal mines in Wales just before the start of the First World War, and it sort of flips between the Welsh miners and the aristocracy, can't say that word, that also live within that town. But then it starts, so you start learning about these characters, and then it also flips to Russia with what's going on over there with strikes in Russia and how poor and how they're struggling for food and that. So then it talks about, from there it goes into sort of like the First World War. So you've also got a German point of view from a German spy who is actually in love with a English woman and is actually married to an English woman, but has to keep it a secret because obviously he is in the German army. So it was good, like sort of like seeing all of this come together, this book. It then goes on to the Russian Revolution, which is obviously happening during the First World War, along with the vote for the right for women to vote. So there's so much history in this one book with about 5 or 6 different characters. Even like there's an American that comes into it, and all these characters are linked in some way, and that's what I love about Ken Follett, is that all his characters are linked. And he might not talk about a character for 4 or 5 chapters, and then you're thinking, I wonder what happened to that, and then he brings that character into the back into the story. And yeah, it just basically, if you're looking for a book, a history book about World War One, Russian Revolution, the women's right to vote, how the Americans come into the First World War, and you know, the German side of it, it's a very, very interesting book. And like I said, Ken Follett just draws you in with his characters, and yeah, I just could not put that book down. I can't wait to read the second book, which maybe won't be till April, because I've got actually a lot to read in March to try and catch up with the Hunger Games, because I do really want to read that new book from Suzanne Collins. So after that book, which was 800 odd pages, I needed a short read, so I picked up James Herbert's Fluke. Now, I gave this a 3-star. The only way I can describe this book is a darker version of Black Beauty. So it's basically, Fluke is a dog, and it starts from when he is a puppy and all of that. But he soon realises that he is different to all the other dogs. He soon realises that he used to be a human, and he starts having visions and realises that he has a wife and child, and that he was murdered. So he wants to find out who obviously murdered him, and to make sure his wife and children are safe. And what happens along the way is it's in a very dark environment. So as a puppy, someone does buy him, but he's not loved, so he goes back into a home, and a re-dogging home, they want to put him down, so he runs away, and he gets in with this other dog in a scrapyard. So there's a story going on there with the people that own the scrapyard. So then after this, he decides that he's going to go and find his family, and really it's a tragic story for the dog, but you just needed to, for me with this book, I just needed to find out what happened with, you know, who murdered him basically. So it did keep me going in. I wouldn't say it's a horror, so it's probably more superstition of a book, but it's definitely a book if you're looking for a short read to go and read. So the next book I read after this, which would have been my 8th book, was More Days at the, I'm going to really say this wrong because it is a Japanese book. It was More Days at the Moriska Bookshop. It's translated from Japanese. I did read the first book and didn't know what to think of it, if I'm honest. So I did decide that I was going to read the second book. I don't know, if I've read the first book, I always have to read the second book. Something in my mind, it's weird, I know. I enjoyed this book a hell of a lot more. I think the first book for me had too many characters, whereas this book sort of centred more on a few characters. And the book basically follows the lives of normal people around a bookshop. This one, doing that everyday thing. This one mainly is based with the main character, her aunt and uncle, and obviously her friends are in it, but not really as much as they were in the first one, and about her new boyfriend, her relationship with her new boyfriend. It's a book that talks about everything in everyday life, friendship, relationships, and this book actually talks about grief. It's a beautifully written story, a short book at 180 odd pages. So again, it was another palate cleanser for me, because I think after reading The Fall of the Giants, I just needed some small books to finish the month off, and obviously reading Hunger Games, they're quite long books as well. So yeah, if you're looking for, again, a short palate cleanser that is a translation, I definitely would recommend this book. I gave it a 3-star, which for me is quite good. I do. If a lot of my books are 3-star, if they're okay, yeah, I would say for someone to read it. 4-star, I sort of is a book that I would say, oh, that's actually quite good, but 5 stars blow me away, and I would say, yeah, definitely, you know, no matter what, you've got to read this book. So after that, again, that book had a very emotional ending. So I went back, I know I'm a geek, and I read a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They're graphic novels, but they're comic books as well. This one wasn't blown away with. I've never had this one before, but I actually loved the artwork inside. But yeah, I'm not going to go into what the stories are of these. They're just palette cleansers for me, and I just thought I'd share them with you. So this must be the 8th book, actually. We're going back to The Hunger Games and Catching Fire, the 2nd book. So I would say this book is more politically driven. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. You either know it or you really need to read it. And centres more on the politics going on after the Hunger Games and what Katniss is trying to work out with her feelings for everyone. So like Gale and Peter. I find with Katniss, she wants to please everyone and keep everyone safe in this book, and she's not sure who she can trust. Obviously you understand that when she goes into the games. It does build the story for the final book, like, which is what I said I'm going to read next month. I gave this a 4-star. What I did love about this book is that it gives you more of a background to Hamish, and again, it's not in the films, so it, you know, I say about Hamish because the new book that's coming now is actually going to be about Hamish. So yeah, so this was the 8th book that I read for February. I can't wait to read the next one. I haven't jumped straight into it because I don't like jumping straight into series after each other, because I find that if I do that, I do get a little bit bored. So, but I will be reading this, I will be reading the next one in March, before the next book comes out. And finally, I finished this month with a romance book, which isn't like me at all, but I said that this year that I wanted to read more genres, and romance was one of them. And this book was, I actually picked it because I really like the cover and I really like the name, is You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry. And I gave this a 3.5 star review. Like I said, I don't really enjoy romance, but I really, really did enjoy this. I think I could just relate to the character of Poppy quite well. She is a travel influencer, and her best friend was a sort of school teacher, but a bit of a geek, I would say, and she's quite a popular, good-looking girl, and they do have a strange relationship. It's a friendship that you wouldn't actually think that would work, but it does. And I love the banter between the two characters, and it's such a witty and funny book that I was there laughing out loud at this book. You basically see their friendship grow, but then it does break, and it flips between the present vacation that they're on, because they are going on this vacation. They haven't spoke to each other for 2 years, and they're going on this vacation. She's not really sure what she wants to do in life. He is, you know, going to his brother's wedding, and you basically don't know why they fell out 2 years previous, and it flips back to 10 years before, when their friendship started, and they go on a holiday every summer. And I love the fact that it flips back and forth between the present holiday and back to 9 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago, and then finally to 2 years, so you find out what happens. I just loved it. It was just a book that I could carry on reading and reading and reading. Easy read again. It just kept me interested by flipping backwards and forwards. So yeah, if you're looking for a romance novelist and you're not really into your romance, it wasn't too spicy either. So yeah, there's definitely not anything spicy about this book, I would say. Then Emily Henry might be the author for you. So there we have it. That is the books I read for February. If you have any recommendations, please put it in the comments below. If you're new around here, please don't forget to subscribe. If you want to see more of me babbling on about books, yeah, subscribe. I'm going to try and be here every week. I'm not promising, but I will try. And don't forget to like this video. And thanks for watching. Cheers, bye!